Good evening, everybody. Please stand up for the national anthem. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Shairi De Silva. I'm the curator at the Lunaganga Trust. Before we get to the main event in today's program, the 16th Annual Geoffrey Bawa Memorial Lecture delivered by Kengo Kuma, we'd like to take just a few moments to reflect on Geoffrey Bawa, whose 100th birthday falls today. So I'd like to invite to the stage Channa Vaswatha, trustee of the Geoffrey Bawa and Lunaganga Trust, to speak just a few words.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 16th Annual Geoffrey Bawa Memorial Lecture. I've just been asked to say a few words about Geoffrey Bawa. A 100th birthday, of course, is a very commemoration of a 100th birthday is a very important landmark for anything. In the case of Geoffrey Bawa, it's also commemorating a great national figure who 20 years after he stopped working still remains relevant and still remains inspirational to many people, not just architects, but to artists, to people who make music, and to so many others around not just our country, but in our region and in the world. Thinking of Geoffrey today, having worked with him for 6 years, and then having been with him when his illness, it brings back various memories to me. And I won't forget the first time I met him at Lunaganga, where our then teacher Anjalendran dragged us along to see Lunaganga, and we were all curious as to what it was like. And one of the things I was stunned, of course, at seeing such a beautiful garden for the first time in my life. And then I was also very, very amused at how wonderful and simple a man he was when my friend Anoma Pires, who was a batchmate of mine, now a professor at Melbourne University, started imitating a dog and sort of started howling, and Geoffrey thought it was utterly amusing. And that was the great highlight of the evening for most of us, in addition to seeing this incredible garden. Years later, one summer I had a call from Geoffrey, as he would call when I was studying in London, and he'd said, "Oh, Channa, come and have lunch with us." And I said, "Fine." And then I had this sort of major drama because I had promised a friend of mine that I'll catch a train with him to go off to Paris at 3 o'clock from London, Victoria. I was finishing the last paper of my examination, so there was this whole drama of, my God, how do I do this? And somehow managed lunch, and there was Geoffrey Bawa at his friends Jean and Christoph's house, and we started having lunch. And of course, he was in many ways interviewing me for a job. And he showed me wonderful pictures of a gorgeous Sri Lankan site. Channa had been away for a few years, and I was sort of every rosy-eyed sort of notion of what Sri Lanka was. And it was the site for the Kandalama Hotel. And Geoffrey said, "Look, we're building a hotel here, why don't you join us?" And of course, at that time, there was no saying no. I, of course, thought that I must be, gosh, my university college education and perhaps some great intellectual notion that I had great intellectual notions about myself. So I thought, wow, he's selected me for a job. Little did I realize that I was actually chosen as his walking stick. And for the next 6 years, he used a live walking stick on one side and a beautiful, first the resin one during the day and a wonderful bone and Indian rosewood one for the night. And I would sort of accompany him, not just to sites, but occasionally to other social events as well. And I began to realize that it really was a wonderful highlight of my life because I was right up and in front of Geoffrey's life and all the various things that happened. In fact, a step in front of him. And I could observe all the various bits and pieces, all the praise, the honor, and occasional brickbats that would come at Geoffrey. And for the next 6 years of my life, all my sort of pretensions of intellectual glamour was gone. I was just a walking stick, occasionally put to work as an architect. And some of my friends who are here in the audience, like Amila, who's here right in front, would quite remember some of those memorable moments with Geoffrey. One of them I'll never forget was that Amila and I was in this van on the way to the Kandalama site. And both of us looked at each other in complete horror, knowing that, seeing what had happened on site and how awful it was. And the then site engineer, the late Milroy Pereira, and our engineer Deepal probably noticed it as well. And Geoffrey got out of the car and said, "Chana, lean me against that tree." For the first and only time in his life, he wasn't sure if I could support him in his fury. He leaned against the tree, and the engineer, hiding behind the architect, who was slightly more rotund than the engineer, came slowly up, and Geoffrey said, "I cannot pretend that I'm not outraged," he said. I'll never forget that. "I cannot pretend that I'm not outraged," he said in a completely calm voice. Because what had happened was that the contractors had blown up a rock on which there was a beautiful sort of sapling banyan tree, which Geoffrey had had on every one of the drawings from the very beginning. And my other friend Sumangala, if he's here, will attest to that, because it was one of the trees that was on the drawing. In every drawing, there was a Kandalama. Of course, and then he said, "And Deepal, do you think that your wall is going to be stronger than this million-year-old rock?" Deepal, of course, very sheepishly sort of admitted it wasn't, but eventually he did build a fantastic wall to hold on to this little tree that was left hanging for dear life on a shard of rock. And today, if you go up to Kandalama, that magnificent tree is there for all to see, also propped up by Deepal's wall. So all of these things, really, I remember a man who was really sharp about what he wanted. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he didn't want. And he was very sure about what he did, but was also, there were moments of insecurity. And for a man who smoked 100 cigarettes, and when he once gave up overnight, I asked him, "Why did you ever smoke so many cigarettes if you could give up so quickly?" And he said, "I needed something to hold in my hand." And that was the only reason he smoked. But of course, that was also a sign of the fact that he was not completely sure of everything he did. And I realized there was this wonderful human being who did things because he believed in it. And like all of us, when we do things that we believe in, there are little pangs of doubt, but you do it all the same because you believe. And that's one of the things that I took away from me. And brickbats he got. I'll never forget a letter that we got from a travel operator after the Kandalama Hotel finished. "I can teach Geoffrey Bawa to build hotels. What sort of thing has he built?" Because as soon as it was built, there was a lot of criticism for its simplicity and its grace. But years later, talking with Geoffrey, he said, "Look, Chana, this building will only be complete when bears are sleeping in its rooms and leopards are walking its corridors." There was this idea that the completion of the building was in the future, that buildings don't get completed the moment an architect thinks it's complete. Buildings take their own life. And Geoffrey understood that very, very clearly. And if you look at a lot of his buildings, you'll see that they're allowed to take this notion that the Japanese, who appreciate it, called wabi-sabi. The idea that there is always decay, and in that decay is a renewal. And Geoffrey, I think, understood that perfectly, and for Kandalama, that's what he really intended. And years later, after he had got his stroke and I had been retired from being a walking stick, I was pushing him along in his wheelchair through a particular place in Kandalama which connects the main public areas to the room wing. As I wheeled him out of that corridor, he put his feet down. By then he couldn't speak. He simply put his feet down, stopped me from pushing him further forward, and started weeping. And then I looked at what he might have seen, and there was the hotel in the full glory of what he intended it to be. He saw it for the first time 5 years after we had finished the hotel. The creepers had grown, everything was flourishing, and there were monkeys on the roof, and that was the beginning of the completion of his building. And for me, that was also a great takeaway from him, that nothing really can be complete, nothing can be a hugely egotistical object that we leave in the world, but we leave things that will change and that will become better as they mature. So those are some of the memories I have of the great man, and what he did still obviously inspires a lot of us, and I'm sure it'll continue to inspire us for years to come. And today, on his 100th birthday, I hope that his memory lingers, and some of these lessons that I learned are perhaps transmitted to a younger generation, and I can see a whole lot of young architects here and young students here, and begin to learn that some of these things are what you need to take more seriously than the notion of building a perfect building that you think you leave for the rest of the world. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and I'd like to also say thank you very much to Kuma-san, who insisted with me that he must be here on Geoffrey's 100th birthday, and I really thank him so much for having accepted our invitation, and he's here to speak on this very, very significant day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chana, for that lovely reflection. I'd now like to invite Dr. Sean Anderson, who will speak a little bit more about Geoffrey Bawa's legacy. Dr. Anderson joins us today from New York, where he is the Associate Curator of Architecture and Design at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Good evening. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, greetings. I'm rather humbled and very happy to have this opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. On one hand, Sri Lanka has always been a second home to me. I came here 15 years ago, not expecting in a way to learn great humility and great generosity that I have found not only in the buildings of Geoffrey Bawa and others, but also among all of you at all ages. Sri Lanka has become, in a sense, an extension of my home in New York City and my work at the Museum of Modern Art, where we are undertaking a major exhibition that will open in 2021, looking at trying to understand, in a way, South Asian architecture. And at the center of that exhibition is a number of works by Bawa, as well as others. So this evening, I wanted to kind of talk about my understanding of Bawa on this important day, not only as an architect, but also as a historian, as someone who came to Sri Lanka and began to learn architecture again. And so I was trying to think of titles, I was trying to think of ways in which perhaps I could introduce Kuma-san and to think about what it means to live today in a country, in a world that is incredibly fractured, incredibly divided, but to look at and think about architecture that actually has fundamentally brought people together in different ways. So the title, if you will, is called Nature Near. And this is a little bit of a crib from the architect Richard Neutra, who, when he arrived in Southern California in the 1950s, exclaimed that for the first time in his life, architecture and the environment, that kind of fourth wall, if you will, of the theater, of the nature, was in effect the most important thing, that nature became near. But I wanted to begin a little bit before Bawa, a little bit before what we understand to be perhaps a canonical kind of modern or modernism, and to think and look at the works of the 43 group, about whom I am incredibly invested and very interested, as is the museum and its curators. And we can't go farther than the center of the 43 group with Lionel Wendt, and his images of people and places and landscapes in which not only Sri Lanka is featured and is present, but we look beyond the image and we look beyond the shadow to understand that Wendt and his associates, and like Bawa, began to understand that nature was but an extension of not only this world, but the worlds in which we live. So when we see works like this from the late 1930s or early 40s, Wendt is obviously a keen experimenter with form, with light, with the image, how to make an image. And in fact, this work is called Adventure in Space. But I'd like to think about historical images, historical buildings also found on the island that have found presence also in the work of Wendt, 43 Group, and Bawa, such as Nagulaswaram Kovil in Jaffna, where the framing of space and the framing of nature are one and the same. That our presence and our past meet at the image, at this horizon that Wendt and others found great inspiration from. And so these are two works, kind of looking at an early work of Wendt and a later work of Wendt, where he's experimenting with double exposure. And I find when you look at these two, you understand that Wendt and the 43 Group were very much interested in time, as Chana said. And this time then found root also in his colleagues, such as Ivan Pires, where I can't help but think that this ambalama, this canonical architectural form that is open on all sides to nature and to the landscape, is one point from which you can understand your relationship to the world around you. But I wanted to step back for one moment and say where I learned first of Bawa. And I had the great privilege of being a research assistant in my second year in architecture school with Bonnie McDougall, who was married to Robert McDougall, both of whom were anthropologists. And in the early 1960s and late 50s, they came to the Knuckles region and began documenting the architecture in and around a number of villages. And I began to investigate what these drawings and these images that they were taking at the time meant for them. And Bonnie was very adamant that I understand that these drawings, here is an axonometric of an interior of a house and a plan, each of which is heavily indexed, both in Sinhala and English, of every object, from the smallest to the largest. It's cataloged, it's remarked upon, it's understood that these small elements, these components, became a metaphor or a symbol of larger imagination, if you will, of the interior of a Sri Lankan house. And I can't help but think then that 10 years prior, we have the work of Philip Johnson, who also was thinking about the objects in space. Not only the house, but the objects in the house and the relationship of these objects outward and inward with his now canonical Glass House of 1949. So where do we find Bawa? Where in his trajectory can we locate the beginning, perhaps, of nature being near? And I thought that with the remarkable work that the Trust and Amila have done to reconstruct Ina's house at Lunaganga, we begin to understand that every object in a Geoffrey Bawa house or building, every plane, every image is constructed, is considered, and is imagined as part of a larger whole. Even the surface of the ground becomes part of an extension of that ground and a relationship of the ground to the house and further beyond. Or like the Palantalawa estate bungalow, in which one is forced to be confronted with and pass through these boulders from the front gate inward. Or the most recent addition to the Trust's collection, if you will, of Bawa homes with the Sharmini and Dhruvi Dasaram house. That the relationship between this tree and the color and the stairs behind it are not only well considered, but understood as being one and the same. They are both pathways to another experience. And that Geoffrey would understand that our relationship through and beyond these screens were meant not only to suggest what might lie ahead of us, but also where we came from. So my first experience of a Bawa building, in fact, was this one that Chana described. And I think it is a befitting image to imagine that on one side you have a million-year-old boulder or set of boulders, and on the other a smooth plain that is not only in tension, but one creating an interest, a path, a way forward. And that Geoffrey was always considerate of where and how one saw the world and nature, such as the interior of the Steel Corporation offices, and what he saw from his front porch at Lunaganga, this ordering of the landscape, these lines that become a ground, an aqueous ground, that become water, or that these stairs, like the roots of the tree that I started with, are a pathway upward, outward, and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. I would now like to take just a few minutes to speak on the Bawa 100 Centenary Celebration Program. The Lunaganga and Geoffrey Bawa Trusts have launched this year-long program to celebrate Geoffrey Bawa's legacy, to reflect on the important work and relationships that were a part of his practice, and also to continue his efforts to foster architecture and the arts in Sri Lanka. The Centenary Program is comprised of a series of events, talks, and tours. And with all that has happened, especially in the last 3 months, the Trust has thought very deeply about continuing with this program and its intentions. And we feel strongly that it is more important than ever that we nurture the arts in this island. So I hope you will all join us as we continue this year with our program. Now to tonight's main event. It is an incredible honor to introduce our speaker tonight, Kengo Kuma. Kuma-san is not really an architect who needs an introduction, given his stature in the discipline. His work includes many prestigious projects, including the recently completed buildings for the Victoria and Albert Museum in Dundee, Scotland, the Hiroshi Museum of Art in Tochigi, as well as the soon-to-be-completed Olympic Stadium for the 2020 Olympics in Japan. Each of these projects are astoundingly beautiful in their forms, immaculate in their craftsmanship, and thoughtful in their use of materials. But for me personally, what has been so admirable and inspiring about Kuma-san's work is the way in which each building addresses its location, not only by using local materials and adapting traditional techniques, but also because they are designed to engineer processes and have a reach that is far deeper than the footprint of the building. Kuma-san's work questions the habits of the contemporary city and mobilizes the deployment of traditional construction techniques and crafts in innovative ways, offering a sustainable counterpoint to the relentless concrete, steel, and glass structures that tyrannize today's cities. Whether he is designing an 8,500 square meter museum or a small forest pavilion, in every project, Kuma-san explores these principles and the agency of design beyond the creation of form. It is an especial privilege to have you deliver this lecture tonight, Mr. Kuma, as we celebrate Geoffrey Bawa's 100th birthday, because we know that so many of these values were held dear by Bawa as well, and his work is a testament to these explorations. So without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kengo Kuma to the stage.
Thank you very much for inviting me on that special day. As he was born 100 years ago, today, July 23rd. And he is still giving me many inspiration and many hints for buildings. And today I want to show how he still is important for us. And I want to start showing the Nganga. In the last of lecture, I will show the small pavilions we are designing for the garden. It's a great honor for us to design something with him. And also the Kandarama is always giving me many hints about screens, integration with greens, respect topography, that kind of things. And luckily, we are doing the renovation for this Club Villa Hotel he designed. My friend Murakami-san bought that hotel, and he asked me to do the renovation. But as I don't want to change the building, and I try to respect his detail and his material as possible as can. And it's almost completed. And I want to ask you to come to the hotel to see what I did. I do this very small thing, what I did. And I want to start this project because this is a project, the museum for this ukiyo-e artist, Hiroshi, I got many hints from him. This ukiyo-e, the unique thing is rain. The Hiroshi treated the rain as a screen in the space. The rain is vertical lines, and it creates layers in front of bridge. And the bridge is also treated as screen. And the layers of screens is creating depths. And I think it's very architectural solution. And another example of Hiroshi is the screens and layers and depths. And this was done by Vincent Van Gogh. Vincent Van Gogh learned many things from Hiroshi. And the Hiroshi gave the hint to Impressionism. And another good example of cultural exchange. And the Bawa is the same. The cultural exchange between Europe and Sri Lanka, through that kind of exchange, he brings a new history to architecture of 20th century. And my Hiroshi Museum, the roof is very important as Runuganga. And also I try to connect the building to the mountain. This hall is most important part of the building. The building is just next to the mountain. And in Japan, most of villages are sitting at the edge of mountain. And that kind of mountain, as we call them, Satoyama. Sato means village, and Yama means mountain, and village mountain. And the people's life are totally depends on the nature of Satoyama, and material came from the mountain, and energy also came from the mountain, because there were no electric company, no gas company, and people, the boils of waters, the showers and cooking, the mountain was used for source of energy, and people's life totally depends on the resource of mountain. And then people respected the mountain very much. And then people built the shrine beside at the edge of mountain. And the shrine is a strong message to the people. If we destroy the forest, destroy the mountain, so we cannot survive anymore. That's a strong message of shrine. But in 20th century, the people didn't respect mountain anymore, because energy and materials, everything came from big city, in case of Tokyo, and the mountain was abundant. And my wish, my idea, is to reconnect mountain and the village again by cutting the building, cutting the small hole in the building. This is a small hole in the building, and I'm going back to this. This is the hole. And from the village, people can feel the mountain, feel the shrine. And also, in Bawa's building, I feel his love to mountain. He tried to connect mountain and building. And material-wise, I try to use material from mountain. And the roof, even the roof, we did use wood from the mountain behind. And so I try to create shadow. And the shadow is very important for Bawa as well. His building, the sunlight is very strong here in Sri Lanka, but in his building, so we can enjoy beauty of shadow. And And I also try to create beautiful shadow besides building, in the building. And in the building, the material is started from rice paper screen, the local stone, and the local wood. And again, I try to create layers of screen. And the layers of screen is creating depths. You can see the 3 layers in the building, and the transparent but feel depths of space. And in Western painting, depths was created by perspective method. But in Asian painting, the depths is not coming from perspective method. The layering and the colors, so we are creating the depths of space. And so in China, so we try to use bamboo for the building because bamboo is very important for Asia. And this bamboo house, we didn't want to cut the topography. So we tried to preserve original topography as it was, and then the building is following the topography. Like that. And the material, the bamboo, and it's very close to Great Wall. And Great Wall is also has same approach. The building is following the topography, didn't cut the topography. Is very important for us. And in the center of the building, we designed this small tea house. And the drink tea is also very important for us, as a tea can bring us to the different world. And then I designed a tea house in the center of the building. This is tea house we designed, and this is a bridge to tea house. And the layers of screen again, and we can approaching nature. And as the Shon-san explained, nature near is very important for me as well. And in Italy, I want to show the unique technique of Japanese carpenter. Japanese carpenters is also creating this small toy. Name is Chidori toy, and without any nail and without any glue, the people can fix the joints. The 3 types of joints, 1, 2, 3, and finish. And as we did use this joint system for the small pavilion. And my student actually constructed by themselves. And after coming back from Italy, we tried to realize a bigger construction by the same method. We tested the structure of this joint system in the university, and the 10 meters high building, 3-story building, was made by that structural system. And there is no column in the building. There's only the sticks, and the dimension is 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. But it gathers, and the structurally is enough. And good thing for this structure system is the showcase for museum also made by the same system. And also furniture, chair and table, is all made by the same system. And in the mountain of Japan, we designed the wooden bridge. And wooden bridge was very popular in Japan before 19th century. But in 20th century, most of the wooden bridges were gone. But we tried to bring back that beautiful structure again. And we worked with the structural engineers to solve the difficulty of big span by wood. And our idea is always try to use small, intimate unit. The intimacy is very important for us. And smallness is also very important because our body likes to live with intimate material and intimate scale. This is inside of the bridge. And for the same village, I found this small tea house with thatch roof. And so we designed a small hotel for the village with the facade of thatch. But it's very difficult to find a craftsman now because the craftsmanship of thatch almost gone in Japan. But material-wise, thatch is very warm and also very humid, and I like the textures of thatch. This is interior. It's a small hotel, but the people are selling the vegetable of the village and almost some the local the products by craftsmen. And it's a very unique client for us. It's a Starbucks. But because of location, it's in front of this Tenmangu as a shrines, the Starbucks want to have the special shop. And this is our Starbucks. And again, we constructed the shop by sticks. And the sticks are working as structure of the building. Those sticks are supporting the building. And so again in China, in the mountainside, we designed one museum. And again, we didn't want to cut the topography. We try to respect and preserve topography as it is. And the building is following the topography like that. And it doesn't look like new building because the roof tile is coming from the old the houses. So it's a recycled of roof tile of old houses. And I like that kind of color. In Japan, already the roof tile is coming from big factory and mass production, and the same color and same size is very boring. And instead, the China still the natural material available, and I did use this material for the screen as well. The detail of the screen is important for this project. This is the detail. So we suspended the roof tile by stainless wires, and we try to control natural light we try to bring wind, the control light, and we also create the beautiful shadow in the building. And the floors is inclined like that. Because we are following the topography, we didn't cut the topography of the site. And in the center of Beijing, it's just south of Forbidden City. We did the project for the place, and it was old courthouses. It's very traditional old courthouses, and some developers tried to make the tall building, but the people living here was against the tall building, and some the newspapers protested the project. And then finally, Chinese government decided to preserve the old houses. I think it's a very good decision, smart decision, and we as 4 architects were invited to do the renovation. And we tried to create a screen between the street and the building. And actually, my office in Beijing is in that building. And we are enjoying the life of the street. The street is called Futon, and very human and very intimate, very different from the wide street of Beijing. And also interior, the wooden structures of old Beijing house is amazing. This is the original wooden structure of the house. Before I did that project, I thought it is structurally a masonry structure by brick, but actually it is a wooden structure building. And in Europe, we also tried to design some roof and some screen and some natural material. In France, we did this project and preserved the brick building and create wooden screens to protect the building and to integrate the building with environment. And as a semi-covered space, in Japan, we call this kind of space engawa. Engawa is between building and gardens. And also Bawa's project in Luganga, he designed a beautiful engawa, in between space, creating beautiful shadow. So we proposed the same idea in France. And also this hall is to connect city and nature, and through this hall, people can feel nature is very near to the city. And our recent project in Paris is a new station close to Saint-Denis play of football stadium. And it's a very dense district in Paris, and we try to bring nature to dense district, and the building is melting into the topography of the place, and material-wise, it is made by wood. And railway companies, as a beginning, they didn't want to use wood for the building, but finally they said okay to use wood for the station. So again, the screens and slope and creating the new topography in the city. And instead, the Portland, Oregon, so we designed this museum. The idea is coming from Japanese village. The Japanese village, we sometimes have this kind of the plaza, and the plan-wise, we call this type of planning goose flying planning. By adapting goose flying planning, so we can create many corners, and each corners can have can create close relationship with gardens. And for example, this kind of corner, this kind of corners, and we can open up the windows, and if weather is good, so we can create this kind of close connection with nature. And interiors, the screen again, and so we did use local wood from Oregon to the building. And the Briande Dandy is a hint for the building. Because it's a sea cliff of Scotland, I like the textures very much. It's very different from concrete. This is very different from metal. It's a beautiful creation of natures, and composition of sea and land can create this kind of beautiful textures. And location-wise, it is very similar to sea cliff. We push the building a little bit into river, and then the people can feel the earth in the building. And again, we try to connect city and river, and we cut the building like that. Same as Hiroshi Museum, same as project in France. And this is the whole, and to connect the river and the people's life. And for interior of the building, so we try to bring the Scottish oak and to create warm feeling. As a normal museum is a white cube, but this museum is totally different. And the warmness of wood can create totally different soft atmosphere for the museum. And also the wood, the detail of the wood is not straight again, it's vibrating and creating the wave. And so now we are designing a small pavilion for Brilliant A London. And this is the first sketch of the project. And this is a mock-up of the pavilion. So we try to combine bamboo and carbon fiber for making the structure. And I like to do that kind of a small pavilion, because when I do the small pavilions, so we can test many ideas, and also we can get many hints from material. And for the bigger projects, sometimes we can bring that idea, we can extend that idea to the bigger scale. And in September 14th in London, it will have the opening ceremony, and if you have time, please come to join the opening ceremony September 14th. And I'm very much interested in combining contemporary technology and traditional material. And so we combined the bamboo and carbon fiber film. The carbon fiber is very light and very strong. And so I want to show the project by carbon fiber. The original building was very old building. It was a very normal, very standard office building. And the structural reinforcement was needed. And normally structural reinforcement is done by steel bracing, something like that, but it's not so elegant. And instead, we used carbon fiber. And the carbon fibers can create shadow and a very, very light, transparent screen. And this is a detail of carbon fiber. And this idea, a little bit similar to our new project in Runeganga. The National State Olympic Stadium is almost done, and our idea also is coming from some traditional building and some contemporary technology. And so we try to integrate the green and building. Like Kandarama, so we bringing the vegetation in the building. And also the roof to create shadow is very important for stadium. Because summer in Tokyo is very, very hot, so I want to create the series of shadows like this building. This is a Horyuji temple, as it was built 7th century. It is still 7th century building surviving. And it's the oldest wooden building in the world because of this section. The series of roof is protecting building from sunlight and rain. And in Asian building, the roof is always a very important element, very important design. And also this part, soffit, is very visible from ground, and we carefully designed the soffit like this. And so we try to use the cedars, local cedars, from 47 prefectures of Japan. That means from north to south. So we want to show the diversity of Japan, because south, the wood from south has very light color. Wood from north is a little bit dark colors, and I can show the diversity of Japanese climate and diversity of Japanese the local culture. And this is the interior of the stadium. Also, the roof is made by wood. And the natural ventilation is always important in Bawa's building. And the wind, instead of air conditioning, he carefully designs the flow of wind. And for the bigger project, I also want to avoid air conditioning. And the angle of soffit is calculated by computers, and the pitch of wooden louvers also simulated by natural wind in the site. And materials, those recycled materials is used for the sky walkway on the building. And our idea is open the stadium to public so every day, 365 days a year. And the sports event happens in just a few times a year. But this kind of public space is very necessary for community, we thought. And also we designed the creek besides stadium, because the building itself is very important, but garden is sometimes more important than the building. And instead, besides those bigger projects, I like to design small pavilion, like the pavilion for Lunuganga. It is a small trailer house. The trailer house in 20th century is an invention of America. It's steel and aluminum and those industrial material. But the trailer house was made by wood, and a totally different warmness happened in that trailer house. The same size. It's not big building. It's not 2.4 and 6 meters, and totally 14 square meters, but very, very comfortable because of wood. And so sometimes people can use this as a private villa, but sometimes the people did use that as restaurant. And in the center of Tokyo, we open these restaurants by ourselves. And good thing for this restaurant is we didn't need building permission, because this is just mobile cars, and we opened this restaurant in 1 year, but still people are talking about the experience in that restaurant. And these small pavilions we did in Italy. We worked with ceramic company. The ceramic tile is usually used for cladding. The concrete structure and the ceramic tile is at very 20th century. But our idea is to use ceramic tile as structure of the building. This is the models, and this is a structural analysis. And so we did use the stainless pipe and ceramic tiles. So open those two materials so we can create that very transparent structure. And also in Italy, so we designed this unique pavilion by umbrella. And the Milano Triennale, this event, the Milano Triennale invited me, and the theme they gave us is as Casa di Tutto, as a Casa di Tutto. But in Japanese, Casa means umbrella, and then we found this solution. Casa di Tutto is umbrella house, is my translation. And but to use umbrella is very smart idea for creating this light temporary pavilion. I got a hint from Buckminster Fuller, but Buckminster Fuller's dome is basically frame structure. But this umbrella building has no frame. The secret of the structures is tensegrity structures. Tensegrity is a balance between the tension of membrane and the compression of the small tiny frame. And we combine those two things together to create this light pavilion. And 15 students work together, 15 umbrellas. They brought 15 umbrellas. And the space is enough for 15 students to sleep. And this is the windows for umbrella house. And this is the entrance door, like the small entrance of tea house. So as you know, the Japanese tea house always has small entrance. Likewise, we designed this small entrance. And the student really enjoys the life in the umbrella house. Drinking here, sleeping here. And this is the material of umbrella. This is a project for MoMA. The MoMA invited us to participate, form delivery the exhibition in 2008. So we got a hint from this poly tank. In construction site, so we always can find this water tank. And the good thing for water tank is controlling weight. If we put waters, it's very heavy, solid, and if we slow waters, it can be light, and we can move to new construction site. We designed this shape, and by rotating system, we produce this new type of tank. And good thing of this tank is this circulation system of water. A normal tank, the water cannot be as a flow, but this tank system, we can create flow of waters, and we can create flow of water in the wall and in the building. And this is an experimental house made by this unit in Tokyo. There are also students work together with me and connecting the pipe, connecting the tank, and this is the final products. And our idea is the hot waters and cold waters can flow in the wall, and we can control temperature by choosing the temperature of water, and it's a new system. It's a normal house, normal building. The structure system and pipe system and interior all separated, but in this house, so all the systems are integrated, like our body. Our body, the structures and the pipe and the surface, all integrated. Likewise, this house can achieve that kind of integration. And finally, I want to show the image for the gift project for Runuganga. I got a hint from these beautiful chairs designed by him. It is a beautiful curvatures and very transparent. It's melting into the beautiful gardens of him. And this is the first sketch of our the Runuganga project. The materials we This is as a structural analysis. And material is very important. This material is kitsuru. It's a local plant. Kitsuru I like the beautiful line of kitsuru leaves, and we try to bring kitsuru under this kind of line. And it's very similar to carbon fiber project. But the material-wise, carbon fiber is very contemporary, and the kitsuru is very natural, but the same impressions we can get. It is a mock-up of kitsuru as a screen. And by using these materials, so we try to create the harmony with the beautiful gardens of Runuganga. And so always, the Geoffrey Bawa's building can give us many inspiration. And he tried to create from the place. He respects the place. He respects plants. He respects topography, and he has a strong idea for creating new environment. And then his space is not nostalgic. His space is always very new for us. And I also want to do the same as an approach to the place. Thank you very much.
Kengo-san, I just want to say thank you very much on behalf of the Runuganga Trust and Geoffrey Bawa Trust. My name is Suhanya Raphael. I am a trustee, and I know today being Geoffrey's birthday, I think it's very apt to have an architect like you speak and honor Geoffrey's work, but also we can see influence, innovation that you have made. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just before we leave, I do also need to thank others. This would not be possible without a range of people committed to the work of the Trust, and the memorial lecture has always been supported by Miles Young. We couldn't have done it without him, and of course Anjalendran, who sits with us through this journey. So can we just say thank you? I have to say on behalf of the Trust, I'm just thrilled to see how many of you have made the effort and commitment to come this evening. I feel this is the beginning of our centenary celebration of Geoffrey's work, his legacy, as friends, as family, as professional colleagues, as audience. And as part of that, Shari mentioned our centenary program. So I really want you to look up the website, our Bawa 100 website, to see other programs as they roll out across the year. Geoffrey is a big figure, and one day is not enough. We need an entire year to celebrate him. I also want to say thank you to the team that has helped put together the Bawa Centenary Program with the Trust. Without all the four of you, we could not begin this incredible journey this year. So with that, I also want to say thank you, Kuma-san, for coming to Sri Lanka and celebrating and marking Geoffrey's 100th year. Thank you.